It's been around 2.5 years since the world first saw the original release of Spyro the Reignited Trilogy on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One in 2018. Ever since then, all the talk has been about what a potential follow-up to these remakes would be like. A fourth Spyro game, so to speak. No, God, not that. Anything but that. No! So in today's video, I'll pretend that I've been given the incredibly unlikely task from Activision of writing and making the game, outlining just how I would make Spyro 4. Let's do it.
Haven't you guys ever seen a dragon before?
Hello folks, my name is the Kiwi Dragon, and welcome back to my channel for what is the first Spyro-centric video that I have ever made. Now, as you'll no doubt be aware, in the past my content has ranged from news and theories, to reactions, and even fun little side projects, like that time I reimagined CTR with a Formula 1 style grid, combining two of my favourite things, video games and real-world motorsport. Now don't get me wrong, news and theories can be fun, but I really enjoy being allowed to express my creativity and to let my imagination run wild. Those of you who are long-time viewers of my channel will remember that about this time last year, I made a video talking about how I would make a brand new Crash Bandicoot game, a game which I titled Crash Bandicoot The End of Time. The video itself actually did pretty well for my fledgling channel, and a lot of you liked the concepts I actually came up with. And this was, of course, before Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time was announced, so there were some interesting coincidences in my concept and what became Crash 4, such as the game titles using the word time in them, the concept of revisiting time zones we'd already visited in past Crash games, and of course, having Entropy and Cortex as the primary antagonists of the game. So, hey, if anybody from Activision is watching, I am still waiting for that royalty check in the mail. I'm only joking, of course, but seeing as how much you guys enjoyed my concept of Crash Bandicoot The End of Time last year, this year I thought I'd see if I could work my magic once more, only this time for a brand new Spyro game, just in time for Spyro Community Day. So, let's make ourselves a brand new Spyro game. Before I continue though, I would like to ask that if you're not subscribed to my channel, if you'd be so kind as to click on that subscribe button and hit that bell icon to be notified about my future videos, either every time I upload or just sometimes. At this time, I'm currently on a campaign which I am dubbing The Road to 1000, an attempt to try and hit 1000 subscribers before my birthday on August 27th. And I can see that currently, approximately 89% of people who watch my videos aren't currently subscribed to my channel. So if you could hit that subscribe button, I would really appreciate it. Alright, now back to the video. So before we make this Spyro game, there are a couple of ground rules which we should probably establish. First of all, I am setting this game as the fourth game chronologically after Spyro 3 Year of the Dragon, given how that was the last game in the Reignited Trilogy, and seeing as how Crash 4 It's About Time carried on from Crash 3 Warped. Now I know a lot of fans will say that I'd possibly just be retconning Enter the Dragonfly and Spyro Hero's Tale out of the main continuity, and I hate to say it, but maybe it's for the best. Enter the Dragonfly is downright awful. And A Hero's Tale is pretty good, and I did enjoy it. It's honestly, in my opinion, the fourth best Spyro game in the whole series, but it felt a bit too different from the Spyro games which we came to know and love as we were growing up as kids. Secondly, I wanted to set out to make a game which would not only feel familiar to longtime fans of Spyro, but also would be welcoming to newcomers. So I didn't want it to be lore heavy, but I still wanted to have some fun little references and nods to other Spyro games that longtime fans of the series would appreciate. Third, I wanted to try and keep this concept based in reality. Given how recently Toys for Bob have been assigned to assist on the development of Call of Duty Warzone, I have it in my head that Beenox would be the ones who'd be developing this concept. And finally, the music. Something which is very important in any Spyro game. Now, those of you who know me personally will know that I adore the music of the original trilogy, and I am a huge fan of The Police, so the music for this game would be composed by the mastermind of the soundtracks from Spyro the Dragon, Ripto's Rage, Year of the Dragon, and of course Enter the Dragonfly, the one and only Stewart Copeland. However, in this concept, Stewart would not be working alone, as he would be working collaboratively with another person. Originally, I wanted this to be the talented Stephan Vankov, who composed the remastered soundtracks for Spyro Reignited, but as Vankov has been associated in recent years with Toys for Bob, or at least according to his LinkedIn page, I'm not sure how the technicalities of that would work, with Toys for Bob currently tied to Call of Duty Warzone. So if in this scenario Stephan was unable to be brought in for a new Spyro game, my backup plan would be to use the equally talented Nicolas Tremblay. Tremblay remastered the original CTR and CNK soundtracks and composed the soundtrack for the newer tracks in Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, and I think he would be extremely capable of providing a great sound to Spyro 4. And yes, you may have caught on that I have actually borrowed that last idea from a recent Reddit post which was posted on r/gaming leaks and rumours. Now, with all the technicalities out of the way, let's begin. So first things first, the name. As you may have seen by the thumbnail, I've decided to call this concept Spyro 4 All Fired Up. I chose this name because it makes a lot of sense to me. If you think about it, the previous game was called Spyro Reignited Trilogy, a name chosen to say that the flame of Spyro had been lit once more, burning stronger and brighter than ever before. So, to me, the logical choice of name was All Fired Up, as it had a twofold meaning. Firstly, because now the metaphorical flame of Spyro has been reignited, and I see it as being all fired up and ready for more games. And secondly, of course, because it is one of Spyro's catchphrases, so to me, it's a name that makes total sense.
I feel fired up, Bob.
We also ought to examine what the Reignited Trilogy brought to the table and what elements of the first three games were popular with fans. So first of all, I thought, what exactly should Spyro collect as he goes on his next journey? Gems, of course, are a must, as much like the first three games in Spyro Reignited, they would be necessary not only to complete each level, but also to progress further in the game as a whole. So naturally, Moneybags would be back to his greedy ways, requiring payment to open portals to new levels, and to receive certain items to complete levels. Another collectible which was really popular with fans was, of course, the dragons from the first game. One of the most interesting things in the Reignited Trilogy version of the first game was freeing each dragon and seeing how they would look, but also what their personalities would be like. And another collectible which I personally liked was the baby dragons. And while they were only newborns and reignited, I felt like they weren't exactly given enough personality, and their full potential hadn't been met yet, something that even the original Year of the Dragon didn't do back in 2000. So I would bring back gems, dragons, and dragon eggs, all as collectibles. Now you're probably thinking, wouldn't that be a whole lot of collectibles for one game? And in order not to overload the game with collectibles, there would be way less baby dragons than in Year of the Dragon, with each homeworld having 10 dragon eggs to find for a total of 50 dragon eggs, with 20 adult dragons in each homeworld for a total of 100 adult dragons, for a total of 150 dragons overall. Now, instead of doing what Year of the Dragon did and having dragon eggs hatching there and then in front of the player, I thought they could be collected and delivered to a dragon daycare, where you can play with them and they will hatch, and you can interact with the baby dragons in a similar way to the chows from Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2. You can even get them to grow by feeding them certain foods and playing mini-games like races or tug-of-war with them. That way then, you can have a little fun side game to play for when you want to take a break from the main Spyro adventure. As for the adult dragons, they will have been crystallized once again. However, not just in the typical green crystal, but also in crystals imbued with elemental powers, specifically fire, ice, electricity, wind, and darkness. Generic crystal dragons are still green, fire crystal dragons are orange, ice crystal dragons are now light blue, electric crystal dragons are yellow, dark crystal dragons are blackish purple, and wind crystal dragons are white. In order to activate the elemental crystals, Spyro would need to use the corresponding breath. That's right, I would be bringing back the elemental breaths, which have been a staple of the Spyro games after Season of Flame. When Spyro defeats a boss, he would be able to visit a Dragon Elder who will teach him the corresponding breath from a rune that has been dropped by the boss. He will also have his flame breath from the start and will get the wind breath from defeating the first boss, the electric breath from the second boss, ice breath from the third, and dark breath from the fourth. These breaths can also be used to solve puzzles in any level. Flame breath can be used to activate boilers and burn things like leaves which may be obscuring hidden items, and can also be used to incinerate enemies. Wind breath can be used to move platforms on water or in the air, and can activate propeller-based objects like turbines, while also being able to fling enemies great distances. Electric breath can be used to power electrical machinery via generators, and can also be used underwater to zap aquatic enemies, as well as damaging heavily armoured enemies, causing their armour to break and drop off, allowing the player to charge those enemies without any difficulty. Ice breath can be used to freeze objects on water to be used as platforms, can also be used on land to freeze enemies to use as platforms to reach higher ground, and can also be used to create poles for the player to swing from, and can also freeze certain bodies of water entirely. And finally, dark breath can be used to break any items sealed with a dark aura, causing that aura to melt away, but can also be used to damage enemies by confusing and controlling them to get them to follow you to certain areas to press switches. Each of these breaths can be upgraded further into the game by other Dragon Elders. These will turn into Inferno Breath, formerly known as Super Flame, Tornado Breath, Lightning Breath, Blizzard Breath, formerly Super Frost, and Shadow Breath. All of these breaths will have the same abilities as before, but will damage enemies from further away, and will even do more damage, which is especially useful in boss fights. Next, we would need to establish what the story would be. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I wanted the game to be familiar to fans who've already played Spyro, but I also wanted it to be welcoming to newcomers, so I didn't want it to be too lore heavy, but I wanted it to also have fun little references and nods to fans who have been around for Spyro through the decades. So, Spyro 4 All Fired Up would take place 1 year after the reignited version of Year of the Dragon. When we last saw the team, Spyro had defeated the Sorceress, watched on with Allura as his friend Hunter had entered into a relationship with Bianca, gained all of the missing gems back from Moneybags, who announced intentions of retiring to Spooky Swamp to become a haiku poet, despite then also running into the portal for Crystal Islands. And then Spyro went on to the Super Bonus round, conquering the Sorceress one last time before heading back to the Dragon homeworlds to witness a new generation of baby dragons hatching. Now, some of you may remember that in the original version of Year of the Dragon, there were epilogues which could be unlocked by collecting all of the game's skill points. Now, as you know, the epilogues were not featured in Spyro the Reignited Trilogy. So as a result, there is one part of the epilogue from Year of the Dragon which I would want to adapt to form the basis of the fourth game concept. And the astute among you will have guessed that this, of course, is the dreaded curse of the tail snake from Haunted Tomb. Sorry, I'm just messing around. What I meant to say is I would adapt the villains summit between Gnasty Gnorc and Ripto discussing the Spyro problem. Now, many people will be aware that the original plan for Spyro Enter the Dragonfly was to have Gnasty and Ripto teaming up against Spyro, as well as kidnapping all the dragonflies, but due to the strict deadlines imposed on the developers at Check 6 Studios and Equinox Digital Entertainment by the higher-ups at the awful Universal Interactive Studios, a good chunk of the plans for the game had to be cut, including Gnasty himself, leaving Ripto to return alone along with Crush and Gulp, who were relegated to cameo roles, whilst Gnasty returned alone in A Hero's Tale as one of Red's minions. One of my goals with this concept was to realise the Gnasty and Ripto team up, an idea which many fans have wondered over the years just how exactly such a partnership would play out in a Spyro game. But I can hear some of you at home saying, wait, hang on a second TKD, isn't Ripto dead? We saw him fall into lava and get burned to a crisp with no indication that he survived. And that is where, unfortunately, you would be wrong. Once again, we would return to the epilogues from the original trilogy, only this time we would be looking at Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage, where it was confirmed that Ripto did indeed survive his duel with Spyro and was rescued only to become a new toy for one of the dragons. I would adapt this part of the epilogue from the original Ripto's Rage to be included in the plot of this game. By the way, if you're liking what you're hearing so far, please don't forget to gently tap that like button. It really helps my videos reach a wider audience so they can appreciate it too. Anyway, back to the story. Alright, so now that the finer technical details of the story are out of the way, the synopsis would go something like this. A few years ago, Gnasty Gnorc encased almost every dragon in crystal and was defeated by Spyro, but survived his showdown with the purple dragon. Not so long after this, Spyro saved the land of Avalar from the tyrannical Ripto, who seemingly met his demise in his showdown with Spyro, only to have also survived and been kept in a cage as a pet by an old dragon in the Magic Crafter's homeworld, only to one day escape after growing tired of captivity. A few months later, Gnasty and Ripto meet to discuss what they call the Spyro problem. With a mutual hate of dragons, particularly Spyro, the pair strike up a deal to team up and exact their revenge by humiliating Spyro and defeat him once and for all. A year has passed since Spyro defeated the sorceress, and he is relaxing in Stone Hill when all of a sudden different coloured bolts of energy rain from the sky, encapsulating the dragons in crystal once more, excluding Spyro as once again he is too young to be affected. Fortunately for Spyro, before the adult dragons were encapsulated in crystal, his friends Hunter and Bianca had come to visit him in Stone Hill. Spyro instantly recognises this as the work of Gnasty Gnorc, whose magic appears to have grown stronger since Spyro last encountered him. Spyro would then set about freeing the dragons again, but before he gets too much of a sense of deja vu, Bianca shows him a dragon who is encased in crystal, but not the typical green crystal, but an orange crystal. Bianca deduces that the crystal has been imbued with the element of fire. Spyro would hit the crystal with his flame breath to activate it before stepping on the platform and freeing the Dragon Elder inside. The Dragon Elder explains to Spyro that he believes Gnasty's magic has indeed gotten stronger. Quite how, he doesn't know, especially considering how dumb and ugly Gnasty Gnorc is.
Ugly?
All of a sudden, Elora bursts through a portal, demanding that Spyro and Hunter accompany her to Avalar as the Professor needs their help desperately. After a quick introduction between Elora and Bianca, the Dragon Elder deduces that the Professor's problem may be in some way related to Gnasty Gnorc, and advises that Spyro, Hunter and Bianca head off with Elora to Avalar to see what the Professor needs. Meanwhile, somewhere far, far away, Gnasty gloats to Ripto that his spies have informed him that their plan has worked like a charm, and how happy he is with his new magical capabilities. A third person talks to Gnasty and Ripto, warning them not to gloat too much over their newfound power, as sometimes magic can backfire, as a two-headed Rhynoc steps out of the shadows. This Rhynoc is revealed to be Grendor, the new two-headed commander of the Rhynocs, a character which has been repurposed from the Game Boy Advance game Season of Ice. Grendor would explain it was his quest for power that led him to teach himself magic from a book he found after sneaking into the forbidden section of the Dragon Realms library, and after finding a transformation spell in the book which could turn him into a towering mass of muscle and brain power, he cast it on himself. Unfortunately, the spell backfired, and while it increased his muscle and brain power, it also caused him to gain an extra head and a constant migraine, which caused him to have fits of rage and drove him to the brink of insanity. Gnasty explains that unlike Grendor, he isn't an idiot and is capable of wielding the power he has received from the spellbook. Elsewhere, Spyro and his friends arrive with Laura to the Winter Tundra home in Avalar and meet up with the Professor, who explains he had just been making some adjustments to the super portal recently, and as he slept, the portal had been reactivated with specific coordinates set. Just as Spyro goes to ask what these coordinates are, Hunter notices that the coordinates are set to 22475, which he says is his birthday, and remembers that these were the coordinates he punched in before Ripto, Crush, and Gulp invaded Avalar. Spyro tells the Professor about the situation with Gnasty Gnorc, and the Professor explains that he doesn't think that this is a coincidence, deducing that Ripto and Gnasty are possibly working together and may have snuck in as the Professor was sleeping to set the coordinates to the world from which Ripto originally came from, but isn't sure why. Spyro asks which world Ripto actually comes from, to which Elora explains that she did some research about the universes the super portal can connect to, and that none of the coordinates matched up to any world that she could find. As the group is discussing this, something bursts through the portal. Another purple dragon, with their own companion. This dragon is confused and demands to know where they are. The group explains that the dragon is currently in the Winter Tundra home in Avalar. The dragon explains that she has never heard of Avalar. The group introduce themselves to the purple dragon, who reveals her name is Cynder, and her companion is a dragonfly named Sting. Cynder explains that she wishes she could stick around and chat, but the dragons of her world are in trouble and have been encased in crystal. Spyro explains that he has seen this before, but has previously defeated the person responsible, Nasty Nork, which Cynder laughs at, telling Spyro that he can't have done such a good job if Nasty is still around. Spyro gets defensive, explaining that he didn't see Nasty coming, but this time he won't be letting Nasty get away with this, and he wants to know if Ripto is involved as well, and just how he survived their last encounter. Cynder explains that Ripto and his kind, the Riptocs, once tried to conquer her world, but were defeated. Most of them fled back to their own realm, but Ripto was apprehended and ordered to be banished to the outskirts of her realm, where he and his minions Crush and Gulp would stay for the rest of their days. Spyro explains that some time ago, Ripto managed to find his way into Avalar as a result of the very same super portal which brought Cynder from her world to Avalar, and that he also defeated Ripto. Cynder once again laughs, explaining that it took adult dragons to quell Ripto's magic in her world, and no small dragon could possibly defeat Ripto unless his magic was not as strong in this world as it was in hers. Bianca inquires what world Cynder actually comes from, given that Allura was unable to determine where the coordinates went. Cynder explains that she comes from a world called Valhalla, a nod to Valhalla. Spyro recognises the name Valhalla as a place that the dragon elders long considered to be the lost world, home to fierce warrior dragons and strong magic where time flows slower than it does in other worlds. Cynder explains that Valhalla was pretty peaceful until recently, until now when all of the dragons had been encapsulated in different colour crystals, and all of the dragons had been snatched. Cynder explains that she had seen the energy thundering down and crystallizing the other dragons and chose to run, seeing a portal had been activated and by chance decided to see if she could escape and round up some warriors to help free the dragons of Valhalla. Spyro, Hunter, Bianca and Allura all agree to travel to Valhalla, with Cynder reluctantly taking the fall back to the Lost World. At this point, players would be able to choose to play as either Spyro or Cynder to begin freeing dragons from their crystallized state, starting with the first homeworld where in typical Spyro fashion you would need to defeat all the enemies and free the dragons. Some dragons would be trapped in the normal green crystal, while some would be trapped in the orange crystal imbued with the element of fire. However, one dragon cannot be freed at this time, as they would be trapped inside of a white crystal imbued with the element of air, an element which Spyro and Cynder cannot learn until they've defeated the first boss. At this point, the player would set about going to the different realms in the first homeworld, freeing the dragons in each realm, collecting dragon eggs and gems, as well as completing any quests that the dragons in each realm have, such as finding certain items within the realm and defeating additional enemies, and so on and so forth. As mentioned earlier, along the way the player would also encounter money bags in some levels, wanting to take your gems in return for access to blocked areas, missing items, and in some cases, dragon eggs. Much like Year of the Dragon, the last dragon nearest to the portal to head back to the homeworld will head into the portal and then can be seen and interacted with in the homeworld. And when Spyro and Cynder have travelled through each realm in that homeworld, the adult dragons will use all of their magic to help them activate the boss portals. In addition to this, additional items and quests can be found in areas which Spyro and Cynder cannot access. These areas can be accessed though by other characters who include Hunter, who has similar gameplay to when he was playable in A Hero's Tale, primarily attacking with his bow and arrow. He can either hit opponents with the bow or he can shoot arrows at them, which is particularly useful as a distance weapon. Bianca, who will be playable for the first time in the series, can enter dungeons which have a strong magical presence. There she will take on powerful magical enemies with her own magic, which she has been practicing with. Bianca can cast spells against enemies ranging from zapping enemies, turning them into stone to immobilize them, or to use them as platforms to reach higher ground, and also using them to weigh down switches to open doors. Allura would also be playable for the first time in the series and can access rougher terrains that neither Spyro nor his friends can due to her strong hooves. Allura is also capable of doing double jumps, kicking enemies, and is able to launch an unstoppable charge to take down bigger, stronger enemies who have armor and also break down boulders. Allura can also do an earth-shaking ground pound to counter multiple enemies if she gets surrounded. Before the quest begins, Allura manages to find an atlas to the Lost Realm, which she uses to help Spyro and Cynder on their quest, and as a result will be your guide to the multiple worlds that Spyro and Cynder visit, introducing each world and their ongoing problems, a reference to the cut content from Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage.
The workers of Idle Springs are famous throughout Avalar for the statues they carve. But Now, some of these statues have been coming to life, scaring the workers and stealing their food. As always, the workers are trying to make the best of things, but usually a statue is just a statue.
Sergeant Bird and Agent 9 would also return, having been contacted by Bianca asking them to travel to Valhalla via the Super Portal in Avalar. Sergeant Bird would be the character that players would use in Speedways, a concept first originated in Spyro A Hero's Tale. He is able to fire targeted missiles at enemies and use rocket thrusters to breeze through speedways with no worries. Completion of these speedways earns the player a lot of gems and a dragon egg. As for Agent 9, he returns with his speciality now being first-person shooter labyrinth zones, originally introduced in Fireworks Factory in Year of the Dragon on a smaller scale, which only he can get through. At the end of each labyrinth would be a dragon egg, which Spyro would then return to the Dragon Daycare in the first homeworld of Valhalla. As well as each of the playable characters, it might be worth having a look at who the bosses of each world would be. The first would be Crush, who would face you atop a tower in the sky. Crush has been given the ability to summon strong wind-based attacks and tornadoes using his club. Defeating him would grant you the Wind Breath ability. The second boss would be Gulp, who would fight you inside of a generator room. Gulp has been given the ability to attack the player with electrically charged roars and the ability to fire electric blasts from the cannon on his back. As a result, defeating Gulp would grant you the Electric Breath ability. The third would be Grendel, who encounters the player in a frozen room, which Grendel uses as a peaceful place to calm his severe migraines. Grendel will attack the player with ice beams fired from his wand, and firing blasts at the ceiling to cause blocks of ice to come tumbling down from the ceiling. As a result of defeating him, Spyro and Cynder will gain the ability to learn the Ice Breath. The fourth boss is Nasty Nork. He will be encountered in a cave with gold and gems. He has a variety of dark magical abilities now, including conjuring Nork soldiers encased in elemental crystal armor, firing beams of malevolent energy, and blasts which can specifically encase the player in a variety of elemental crystals specifically tuned to affect Spyro and Cynder. Defeating Nasty will earn the player the ability to learn the Dark Breath. And of course, the final boss is Ripto, who cannot be accessed until the player has rescued all 150 dragons and dragon eggs and has collected every gem. At this point, Moneybags would appear one last time and reveal that he is guarding the door to Ripto's arena. He mentions that he is also in league with Nasty and Ripto and had financed the combined Nork, Riptok and Rhinoc armies, as he also wanted to humiliate Spyro just as much as them. He once again brings up his time as a boxing champion in university and tells Spyro he has been training just for this moment, gearing up to punch Spyro in the face. At this moment, Spyro and Cynder flame him, causing him to blast into the air, come crashing back down to the earth, telling Cynder and Spyro that he gives up, before mentioning that he is retiring once again, and maybe he'll settle down in a cottage in a forest, find a wife, and have some children. A reference to Shadow Legacy, before realising that's not his style and disappearing. Cynder explains to Spyro that he should be the one to fight Ripto as he's done it before. She explains to Spyro that she's going to go get some help, rushing back towards the land Spyro and Cynder have previously visited. Spyro enters the arena and begins to fight Ripto. He has the elements of fire, wind, electricity, ice and darkness, using them to generate shields. The player will have to use the corresponding element to break the shields and hurt Ripto. Once he has used all 5 elements as shields, he will cast a spell on himself to turn himself into a gigantic monster, which will rampage in an attempt to squash Spyro, as well as firing elemental blasts. At this point, the player will have to control Spyro in free flight, avoiding the rampaging Ripto as well as his elemental blasts before Spyro attacks Ripto whilst he's resting. After defeating Spyro, he collapses and the spell wears off and the normal Ripto returns. Spyro will then carry out his defeated foe out of the arena, where Cynder, Hunter, Bianca, Allura, Sergeant Bird, Agent 9 and all of the dragons of Valhalla are waiting. Once again, they agree to banish Ripto and Nasty Nork to a world far, far away. Meanwhile, Crush and Gulp are sent back to Avalar to go work with the gem cutters in Glimmer as punishment, while Grendel's punishment is to be sent back to the library in Dragon Shores to work as a librarian now that his Rhinoc army has been disbanded due to a lack of payment. The Professor arrives in Valhalla and is deciding the new coordinates to send Ripto and Nasty away to. Hunter snatches the remote once again, this time punching in the numbers 89901, which is the release date of the original Spyro in reverse, 10th of September 98. Spyro and Cynder seize their opportunity to head charge Ripto and Nasty into the super portal before the professor can deactivate the link. Bianca asks Elora where she thinks 89901 leads to, but Elora says she doesn't know, and she thinks that hopefully it's far, far away from here. Meanwhile, Ripto and Nasty wake up in a very dark world with no plant life, no native creatures, and the area has a very purple glow. Not knowing where they are, the two begin bickering, blaming one another for their failed plan, with Nasty calling Ripto tiny and Ripto calling Nasty ugly.
Ugly? That does it!
The duo would then begin attacking each other as the scene draws to a close. Spyro brings the dragons of Valhalla to meet the dragons living in the Dragon Realms, where they instantly become firm friends and form an alliance with them. After some time has passed, Cynder explains she'll probably have to go back to Valhalla. The elders explain that they have built a portal to Valhalla, which will not only allow her to visit any time she wants, but will also stabilise the flow of time in Valhalla by reconnecting it to the Dragon Realms. Cynder explains she'd like to stick around with Spyro as she feels like she has much to learn from him. Spyro, meanwhile, tells her to forget about learning for now though, as he thinks it's time for another much-earned vacation to Dragon Shores, calling for Hunter, Bianca, Elora, Agent 9 and Sergeant Bird to come with them and relax a while. As the group enters the portal, this scene plays out from the perspective of a crystal ball. A dark voice speaks from the shadows, mentioning that the lost world of Valhalla has returned, something he deems most unfortunate, as this mysterious figure waves their hand in front of the crystal ball, revealing it to be a purple dragon's claw, thus setting up a potential sequel where an evil corrupted dragon could possibly be the main enemy. Who that dragon would be though, I will leave up to your imagination. And that is how I would write Spyro 4 all fired up. I apologise if this video was a bit long, but I really wanted to give a detailed approach to how I would make this new Spyro game. What do you think? Do you like my vision for Spyro 4? Would it be something you'd be interested in playing? Comment down below and let me know. If you like what you've seen here today, please don't forget to like and subscribe and share this video with your friends and family in the Spyro community, and check out some of my other content here on YouTube. You can also follow me and interact with me over on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, and now you can also interact with me over on my personal Discord, which has just launched, a link for which is in the description below. And for those who wish to support me, I have a Patreon and also a Ko-fi which you can donate to if you feel so inclined. There are benefits for anyone who chooses to donate, including an exclusive Patreon backer role over on my personal Discord. But that's all for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. Stay safe, stay awesome, have yourself a fantastic Spyro Community Day, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye for now.